Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Joel. You did all the intros this time too. Took the weight off. Thanks. Usually Dave just messes up my name once or twice and then throws it to me to deal with. So thanks for that. But just so everyone knows kind of the program for tonight, these things been doing it for a couple of years now, and really thankful everyone keeps showing up to hear us talk about conditions and what's going on. And the way we like to frame it these days is sort of just go across Western Canada, talking about what's been happening for the last month, since we last talked. And then back around east to west, maybe to look at sort of current conditions, what's going on in the snowpack, what's skiing good, just what people are up to. And then again, just to look ahead and see what's coming on maybe for the next month, what we can anticipate and be ready for. And this time, I think what we're going to do is try to get like a usable tip or learning point from each of our guests, because we have such a stacked roster here of guests. It'd be good if everyone watching, comes away with a little something they've learned. And it's been going really good the last few times we've done this to have everyone just throw questions up in the chat. So at the bottom, you'll see, if you run your cursor over, you'll see the little chat button. Click on that. You'll get a spot. You can throw out questions for the public, and we'll see those, and we'll make sure they all get answered. And best questions get celebrated. Maybe no prize this night, but we'll definitely celebrate you. And yeah, so definitely go hard on the questions. We'll do our best to make sure the right person answers them and get you all the info you need.
And don't be shy. I think we always repeat it, don't be shy. There are no stupid questions. We have always a really interesting mix of people who are not who are just green and just getting into it, and people who ski 4 or 5 days a week sometimes. So it's normal to be a beginner, and there's no stupid questions. So
yeah, totally. That's kind of what these things are all for, trying to help everyone get out there and find the best skiing and the safest skiing. So without further ado, why don't we start with K Country, our new guest this week, Darren Bonk. He's part of the Kananaskis public safety specialist, I think, Darren.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you weren't with us last month, but we did talk about K Country a bit. We talked about a month ago, there was a lot of variability, especially spatial variability, just deep spots, shallow spots, a few different persistent problems we were worried about. And we spent a whole lot of time talking about how to deal with uncertainty. And then instead, we went into a drought. What's the last month sort of been like in K Country?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, and I think just to finish that point off you started, was the uncertainty comes the uncertainty, what you really have to start playing is the terrain. That's what gets really important there. So yeah, the last month in K Country, I believe we were all promised a bountiful snowy February. Instead, we got a solid drought, one of the longer droughts in over 20 years. Chatting to some of the older forecasters who have been around. We got really no snow. We got about 30 centimeters the end of January, and then we got wicked winds from all directions for the next 2.5-3 weeks with no resets at all. Just creating hard slabs, wind press surfaces, scouring what was a meter snowpack down the rocks, scree again. And then just a few days ago, we got finally a little bit of a refresh, about 30 to 45 centimeters, depending on where you are. That 45 centimeter range, probably more around the Burstall range, and then a little bit less on either side. So what's that sitting on now? That's sitting on, on solar aspects, so kind of more south and west aspects. There are a little bit of sun crust starting to show up on the steepest south-facing aspects.
Is that because we had some sunny, warm weather there, didn't we, like a week or two ago?
Totally. Yeah, we did have some warmer weather there. It kind of, brought freezing levels up a little bit into that 2,000 meter range. So kind of just above the Spray Road elevation. It's around 1850-ish. So we're finding a little bit of a temperature crust everywhere just for that little 100-meter band. And then sun crust up on kind of steep solars. And then on everything else is been completely scoured or pressed into varying thicknesses of hard slabs, which took the skiing away. But what it has done, it's kind of, if you will, it's kind of bridged some of those lower snowpack instabilities in the short term. We're not too worried about those at the moment. But what that is going to kind of leave us with here is a poor bond with this new snow and incoming snow. It's going to be quite a hard surface for that snow to bond to.
Nice. Well, I mean, you used a lot of words that didn't sound like great skiing there, but I think there were also, I mean, there were a few windows there where you could find maybe some refaceted surface. It was skiing good. There was some good tree skiing to be had. I mean, you could pick away for 3 of the last 4 weeks at least, but yeah, now, it's definitely dropped off, eh?
It has. Yeah, we were out skiing for the last couple of days, and we're definitely skiing good snow, and you are feeling that kind of underlying crust from most turns. But the skiing's actually quite good at the moment. The wind hasn't really affected it that much, and there's good skiing to be had in most locations right now in Kananaskis.
Nice. Well, we'll see how that compares with all the regions as we work west here. Yeah. Why don't we see what Lake Louise is saying, Marcus? When there's like new light snow on top of very variable surfaces, low angle skiing is probably a little bit better usually. Is that what you've been seeing in Lake Louise, or what's the last month been like there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add to that synopsis, but basically the same thing happened here. And we're sort of left with exactly the same thing from what I can gather. During that drought, there was some stuff that was skiing pretty good, some like really, really sheltered stuff, even in the Alpine, maybe some couloirs, quite a lot bigger lines, or not bigger, but maybe steeper lines got skied that were super sheltered, like Granddaddy, Sugar Cube, Couloir. I think Amers got skied. I'm not sure how that was, but
apparently it was bad.
Yeah, and that sort of like points to it, right? Like Granddaddy's like the super tucked in thing, and the winds are going over it, and just enough getting sucked into it, and not really like getting windy around. But then Amers, it's a more open couloir higher up. So yeah, it was pretty rough, and then it got really warm, and that created some problems lower down, and and then it starts snowing. But the same problem, right? Like we have this powder on top of on west windward stuff. Maybe it's right on rock. It just depends where you're going. And then maybe on solar aspects, probably on some crust. I know I skied some beautiful breakable crust just before the snow. And then lower down, it's going to be like it was May, and now there's a foot of powder on top of it. So everything's sort of sculpted, and there's tree branches underneath it. And so, yeah, I mean, I'd probably go steep or not steep, but maybe in the middle is not the greatest. I don't know. It's tricky. But I hear it's pretty good now. I haven't been out since the drought ended, to be honest. But
yeah, you were saying you were a little under the weather there.
I've been in and out of isolation a bit, but yeah, I've seen some really nice pictures in the last couple of days. Lake O'Hara area, some beautiful snow. Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same as K Country. Yeah.
Sure. Before we go west, though, hey Joel, is there anything you hear all the beta in the shop there? Have you been hearing anything interesting that got skied other than the couloirs there that Marcus mentioned?
Well, yeah, I think we had from I think that some people went to Amers and they said something like my skis weren't sharp enough to turn on that thing, kind of thing. So that was back when it was pretty warm and very windy. There was I think like the Parkway was skiing pretty good, but like very sheltered north, like Marcus was saying, like lots of people on the Kefren lines and Granddaddy area and skiing those kind of like narrower, like really sheltered lines. Chris at the shop here went to have a look at Mount Ball, and they got pretty high up. I think they turned around a bit before hitting the ridge down there. So that's on the 93 South. And yeah, overall, I think here at the store, we were asking people the question quite a bit, and I think for like 5 or 6 straight days, the answer was just miserable, like everywhere. people were like, oh, we went, oh, and it's funny because you know, we had so many people hit the WAPTA and like go for like really long, far walks. Like that was kind of the theme for like a week and a half, you know, like, oh, we went to have a look at Olive and Gordon, or like, you know, oh, we went up to Peyto, and like those kind of like long glaciated sort of like missions where you're going more for the views and the ski quality. That was kind of what was happening in the Rockies here. I'm not sure, maybe like, you know, Darren and Marcus can kind of comment on that. I haven't really been skiing much because of a bit of an injury, but like, I'm just wondering how hard that kind of like, you know, that really warm spell hit Kananaskis, and how that changed the situation a little bit. In the same with like Lake Louise. Marcus, you were saying it was really, really, really hot in Lake Louise for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, in the valley bottom here in Lake Louise, one day it was easily above zero. Is I think not double digits, but it was moving that way or getting close. And then so that's around 1536, I think the village is at. So I mean, that would have been up to low tree line probably, and we're around there. Sort of what Darren was saying, around that 1850 is probably where you start to see that taper off.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, I think it was 2 Wednesdays ago, I was climbing up on Yam in a t-shirt in the sun during that warm spell, and it was quite beautiful. And then the next day I was up in the Spray, skiing on cold north aspects, and I wouldn't say the heat traveled that high up into the Spray Valley. It seemed to stay lower down in the kind of the Bow Valley.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how about if we look out your way, Zoe? I mean, you kind of got your pulse there in Avalanche Canada Center. Like, I mean, the Selkirks, the Monarchies, what's going on out your way for the last month or so?
Well, you guys have definitely given me an easy sell for this area with all the talk of bad skiing in the Rockies. But yeah, I guess since the last time we talked, like you said, Kevin, we went into a bit of a drought period. There is some strong winds, there is some sun. For the most part, it decreased the ski quality, but there's definitely still some really good skiing in sheltered north aspects. But then what came along with that drought period was some really big surface hoar growth, which is pretty common for the interior mountains. So once that surface hoar got buried, it became a pretty significant problem for us for a few weeks there. There's a lot of people getting surprised, a lot of skier accidentals, and surface hoar can be so tough to deal with and unpredictable, like your remote triggering avalanches or triggering avalanches from the toe of a slope, and it can be hard to kind of deal with that problem. So that was quite tough. But following that, we went back into another spell of high pressure in mid-February, and then that's what this most recent storm has landed on. So another drought layer, a little bit of surface hoar associated with that one, but mostly just cross at low elevation and on solar aspects and really wind affected snow. And yeah, the most recent storm snow is not really bonding super well to that hard surface. So that's kind of our next layer of concern, the next thing on the radar for us out here.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's kind of typical with droughts that you get these surface hoar or surface fasting, some sort of, we always say that the, you know, little 5 centimeters in a day of snow or 10 centimeters or something is like the perfect stable snowpack. It's kind of those long times where the surface of the snow is exposed that, yeah. And it was surface hoar, it wasn't surface fasting for you guys mostly?
Yeah, that mid-January layer, that was mostly surface hoar that was catching people out. There was definitely some faceting and crust associated with, but the bigger and more surprising avalanches were as a result of surface hoar. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because we do often have like a crowd of totally varied experience levels here. The difference being surface hoar is just those beautiful feathery crystals that grow on the surface of the snow at night. Like you come out and it's a beautiful clear night, and in the morning it's all those sparkly crystals. Whereas facets are really cold temperatures, kind of sucking the moisture out of the snow would maybe be unless you can think of a better way to describe it.
No, that's pretty much it. And then I guess the story in the last 2 days here and kind of widespread across most of Western Canada, as we've had these pretty strong northerly winds as Arctic air has moved in from the north, and we went from a period of low pressure, whether it was storming, and then this really strong ridge of high pressure came in. And as it pushed down, it brought some really strong winds to all elevations, kind of below tree line all the way into the alpine. And that's really wind sculpted our terrain here.
Yeah. Actually, I was going to try and stump you and say, how do you spell Sestrugi? But
Oh gosh.
maybe I'll take that for the next round.
Maybe that can be a viewer question.
Okay, fair enough. Eric, out on the coast, Zoe just said wind sculpted. I think you said that earlier when we were talking too, that you guys have just had a lot of wind and then warm temperatures. So a lot of firm snow these days.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when we last talked, we were kind of in the midst of a major warm up. We had like +7 at 1850 meters on Whistler, and like fully summer temperatures in town. But that definitely really settled out the snowpack, and I guess unfortunately created a pretty firm crust layer. We got a bit of snow in late January, kind of early February, that didn't bond real well. It felt kind of unusually upside down for us. You know, typically we have that warm, wet weather system that gets pushed out by cold air, and that's nice, you know, progressive density snow. But this was very much the opposite. It felt quite cold initially and then warm with a bit of wind. And so that really created a pretty problematic hollow layer, especially right kind of at and above tree line in the north. You know, luckily closer to Vancouver, just because things are so much warmer and wetter, that all just fell as wet snow. But yeah, further north, you know, that was, I think, what contributed to the fatal accident that we had on the Duffy in early February. You know, it was just kind of the perfect combination of aspect and elevation and then complex terrain. We had another warm up in mid-February that was not quite as bad as January. Still high pressure and pretty consistent sun. People were rock climbing and mountain biking and all that. And that's where things kind of transitioned from skiing focus to more like travel and getting up summits and stuff like that. Like the Spearhead was getting skied a bunch. We were climbing essentially ice on north aspects and then skiing really nice corn on the south facing stuff in the Spearhead there. But we did finally get a snow reset over the weekend. That was pretty evenly, like unusually evenly distributed throughout the sea to sky. We got about 10 centimeters from everywhere, and you know, from the North Shore all the way up to the Duffy, and it fell really nicely without wind. It was kind of the best 10 centimeters of snow that we've ever gotten. It was bonding reasonably well to the crust, especially further north where the crust was a bit softer. But then just Monday morning at 5 a.m., the wind flipped from 5 kilometers an hour southerly to 40 kilometers an hour northerly. And we've had gusts like up to 90K here in Squamish, which is probably much crazier in Whistler on the summits and stuff. And so that pretty much took everything back to crust. Old ski tracks from before the snowfall are visible again, and really redistributed wind slab into most of the fun features. So I think it's probably possible to find pockets of south facing kind of fluff, but it's certainly guarded by a lot of windboard, or just back to being ice crust. I think the exception to that is further north and east, like the east side of the Duffy, which wouldn't have gotten nailed quite as hard by the wind, as well as the Coquihalla, which was kind of the one exception with snowfall totals. They got like 40 centimeters instead of the 10, and didn't get hit nearly as bad by the wind. So really, I think right now around the sea to sky, mostly just looking for interesting tours and summits and stuff like that, and taking advantage of pretty decent travel, and with the exception of going a little further afield to more interesting skiing.
Yeah, sounds like we should all meet on the Coquihalla in the year.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Sounds like you guys got in like 3 weeks the amount of action we get in an entire season.
It was a roller coaster.
Totally.
Hearing Eric talk is kind of like, you know, a series that got like a lot of drama all the time. It's like just like damn, and then it snowed, then it's crusty, and then it got warm and it snowed again, and we went mountaineering and it's like, whoa, that's like so much change. It's crazy.
Yeah, the one nice thing is it's kind of a predictable pattern, but it is kind of funny when we have very changeable weather and people's kind of attitudes are easily swayed to quitting ski season, going to mountain bike season, and then all of a sudden we're back to ski season. So there's been stuff to find the whole time. That's the one nice thing. We've been able to get out steep skiing, able to do some traverses. Haven't had a whole lot of like really banger deep powder skiing, but hopefully that'll come back.
Yeah. I think it's probably worth just jumping back briefly to conditions when you were talking about the Duffy avalanche there. You were saying that the snow was upside down, and we use that term a lot, like right side up or upside down snow. And you described it well as being like, when it's right side up, it's progressive density, I think was your term, just meaning loose and dry on top and then progressively denser, right? And
yeah, totally.
Upside down, you were saying it got warm at the end of the storm, so you had warm, dense snow over lighter snow. Like that'd probably be pretty tough to ski in, first off.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, we often have crusts, but for us, a crust is typically like a really firm sun crust. And so it's almost a reset. Like we look forward to the whole snowpack getting, blasted by the sun and forming this new palette for us. And that just buries everything below it, which is awesome. When we have a weak layer that we're worried about, it's like, all right, well, we'll just give it a week and it'll get turned into, just mush in the snowpack. But in this case, that storm, yeah, it felt really cold, and so there was snow, and then on top of that warmer wind press stuff, and so it was a crust layer, but it wasn't enough to bridge the snowpack and really kind of take care of everything underneath it.
Yeah, and I guess anytime you end up with denser snow over less dense snow, there's probably some avalanche risk. You'll hear people say a strength over a weakness is another way to describe that, and that's always sort of a less stable setup for a snowpack. Yeah, sweet, thanks. A lot of what you were talking about was wind, and Zoe, I think it's the same back in the interior. Hey, that like we've had, it seems to me, more wind events. Well, I mean, maybe we say that every year, but it does seem like a lot of wind events this year, and a lot of like super intense wind events, at least here in the Rockies. Right now, the main avalanche concern for most of BC, I think, is wind slab. Is that right?
I'd say that's pretty safe to say. There's been a lot of talk about wind slabs, especially like I was just saying with those northerly winds coming in. Those hit us pretty hard. We had probably a good 12 to 24 hours of moderate to strong northerly winds. And I mean, that's probably another good point too, Kevin, is that when we're talking about winds that are creating an avalanche problem, it's not always those big, strong, extreme winds that are gonna load features well. It's more so those kind of moderate range winds that actually create wind slabs and create a problem for us. Yeah,
that's right. Eh? Like because we did have winds that were, I think we set up to 150 at Ridgetop, and maybe when you're new to the snowy sciencey stuff, you think, wow, more wind slab, but it doesn't really work that way, right? Like correct me if I'm wrong, the sweet spot is somewhere around like 25 to 50 kilometer an hour winds, is kind of bumping the snow along the surface and depositing it in the first lee feature it gets. And that is kind of the perfect way to create wind slab. Whereas when it's 100, the wind's going everywhere, snow's going everywhere, it's not really ending up anywhere focused.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to summarize it. And another thing that's interesting right now with those northerly winds is in Western Canada, southwesterly winds are kind of our predominant wind flow. But when we get those northerly winds, it's loading features in the opposite way to where it normally loads them. So it's pretty easy to kind of have a picture in your mind of what features typically get wind loaded. And it's pretty easy to get caught out by atypical features being wind loaded. So that's really something to be looking out for in a lot of places right now, I'd say.
Yeah, you hear people say reverse loading. That's just what that means. They like reverse of normal, atypical. Totally. When you guys do your bulletin, I'll ask Darren something about this too when we get to K Country. But when you do your bulletin, one of the icons you have for each problem is a little compass dial. And so you're showing where the wind slab problem is, right? Like what aspect it is on.
Totally. And right now it's on all aspects.
Oh,
Because, you know, it doesn't feel super intuitive, but the storm came in from the southwest, and then we had those northeasterly winds. So it's really there could be wind slabs everywhere kind of deal right now.
well, I mean, on the good side, we'll move along to the Rockies probably here, but on the good side, we were talking so much about like deep persistent weaknesses and unpredictable snow. And Marcus, last time we talked, like it was quite scary to be going out in 93 South and even 93 North and all around Lake Louise. They were getting sort of spooky avalanches on these less predictable layers. Wind slab's a pretty predictable one and pretty easy to figure out where it is, right? It's got to make travel in the Rockies a little easier now, Marcus.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say so. The same thing with our bulletin. It's wind slabs are on every aspect. So, I mean, in a sense, you just have to think about that everywhere you go. And so I guess that's kind of easier in a sense because you know it's kind of probably everywhere. Whereas previous to the drought, you know, there's places avalanching right beside places that felt really good. And it was sort of a little bit random, it felt like. And now it's more unified or uniform sort of across the forecast region. It feels like, and that's sort of what the bulletin's pointing at, I feel like. So a little easier to guess, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do like I'll just check in with Darren about that in a sec. But then maybe why don't we bounce back to everyone and just kind of get a tip or two for dealing with the wind slab, because it is a problem that's like a little more touchable for skiers. You know, like you're right involved with it. These problems we were talking about before, there was no easy test for you know, a buried surface or you know, basal facets are just always there. That whereas wind slab is something that, you know, users as they get more experience in backcountry can identify and learn to avoid while still, you know, getting out and skiing. It is something that people can learn a bit more from. So we can roll back and talk about that a bit. But Zoe, actually, when we do that, maybe we should we'll have one good question for you there. I don't know if you see it in the chat from Peter, but I'll get you to answer that one when we come back.
Yeah. Okay.
But Darren, are wind slabs on your guys' full compass rows right now, or are they in K country? I didn't look tonight. Sorry if they were just in Lee.
So actually, that brings up a great point in terms of the bulletins that we use here in Western Canada are actually, for no lack of a better word, they're not that great for public understanding. And the reason for that would be we have, you know, our elevation bands, Alpine, Treeline, BTL. Okay. We have wind slabs at Alpine and Treeline, but we might only have them on a certain aspect at Treeline or at in the Alpine, but might have them on all aspects in another elevation band. And that's going to show up on the rows as all aspects for both elevations, which is a flaw in the software it's being worked on. It has been being worked on for a while.
Like some of the American ones have a rows that has 3 different elevation bands within the rows. Is that what you're maybe?
Exactly. Yeah. So you kind of get Alpine, let's say, is all aspects, but then Treeline's actually only northeast aspects. But on ours in Canada, that shows up as just all aspect or all aspects at whatever elevations are marked. Mm-hmm. So one of my biggest tips I would give for that is taking the bulletin for what it is and reading that, but then actually go on to the weather data and just take a look over the last 24, 48 hours, where have the winds been coming from? And that's all data on Avalanche Canada on the forecast. And actually go take a look at that.
So Darren, that's like if I go to the avalanche.ca app or avalanche.ca website, I see that map, I zoom in on K country, and you know, there's like the little blue pins for observations. There's the overall bulletin, but then the weather stations are those little arrows or feather looking things, right?
Yeah, maybe I'll share my screen here.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, just show us, because in K Country you guys have two different sets, if I remember. One at Burstall at two different elevation bands.
Exactly. Yeah. So you should be able to see my screen here.
Looks great. Yeah, and that's Mud Lake and Burstall, right?
So this is Mud Lake down at the highway, 1850, 1900 meters. And you get all the data hourly here, temperatures, etc., snow value amounts as well. And if you scroll to the right, you actually get the wind speed, direction, gusts. So you can actually see where the wind's been coming from. So recently, southeast, west, northwests. Then we had a long stint of these easterly winds recently. So that's going to help you build a picture. You know, if the winds are coming from the northeast, they're pushing this way. So they're reverse loading, as Zoe mentioned, on those southwest aspects, which is not a normal. It's atypical for sure. So that's worth looking at. Get the idea of what the bulletin's saying, and then see where the winds have been. Like there's consistent northeast there for almost a day and a half.
Well, then when
Right.
you're trying to predict avalanches, Darren, I'm guessing there's no start zones down at Mud Lake you're worried about. So if you're looking maybe for snowfall amounts at those lower elevation ones, and then yeah, there'll always be one of these ones at higher elevation like Burstall Pass that has winds at ridgetop, which would be what you'd be more worried about for avalanches. And all the Parks Canada ones are the same. It's usually a pair of weather stations, one down low for snowfall amounts and temperatures, and one up high for wind and temps.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, we're looking at none of our weather stations that we use are actually Alpine Ridge features. They're all kind of tree line. Burstall Pass would be kind of exposed tree line.
Okay.
But we look at kind of Nakiska Ridgetop as kind of like our major flows that are coming up at our higher elevation areas. And that's right up on ridge, you know, and that's collecting 150K winds, 130K winds.
Okay.
More normal than we'd like to see.
Yeah, K Country is known for its wind.
Yes,
Gotta get used to it, eh?
Yeah, so that'd be one of my tips is, you know, dig a little deeper with the bulletin, look at what we're recommending in our write-ups, but then dig into the weather history for the last 24, 40 hours, just see what's been going on so you can help build your own catalog of what may be good and what may not be good on whatever given day.
That's a great tip. Yeah, for sure. I mean, read the bulletin at 5 at night when you guys put it out and read what you're predicting to happen the next day. And then the next morning before I go skiing, maybe I should just double check the weather and make sure what you were anticipating actually happened.
Agreed.
That makes sense.
Perfect.
You know, one other thing to mention there, while you guys are on that topic, at least for Avalanche Canada, the bulletins do get updated at 6:30 every morning. If the overnight snowfall amounts were to be more than anticipated, or there was more wind, or there's some kind of change that we didn't foresee the night before. So really good habit to get in. Just have a quick glance at the Avalanche Canada app in the morning and see if anything's changed. Because it does happen. No one's perfect, you know?
Yeah, I didn't know that. So actually, that's a great tip. I thought they were done. The night
know
before.
that. Yeah.
So. Cool.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Just with our wind event on Monday, I think just about every forecast for us had the wind coming in Monday night.
Yeah.
And we had really good snowfall on Sunday and good stability and all that. And so we were definitely psyched to tee off on big stuff on Monday, and then woke up to the house shaking and was just kind of surprised by that. And so, yeah, things change.
Yeah. Well, hey, Eric, while we got you here, might as well bounce to you. We can come back to Marcus and Joel. Just with, we were going to ask for any tips you have for dealing with wind slab. A guy like you covers a lot of ground in the day. How do you keep track of where there isn't wind slab, or how do you deal with that in the field?
Yeah, I mean, right now, our wind slab problem is just on the east to south to west part of the compass. So north slopes are scoured, like I said, back to that crust.
So you can feel it as you ski over.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of step one, I guess, is just looking at that and knowing, okay, the wind's coming from the north. We can play a bit more on those slopes. But I think for me at the moment, you know, we've got pretty low new snow totals. So again, I'm really just like thinking about what are the major slopes of consequence, either a line that has a cliff or really, really big faces on those aspects, those problematic aspects, because the wind slabs that pop off right now probably aren't going to be huge. And so it's more of what that could push you into, in my mind, than just actually getting caught in the wind slab itself. So I think that's the main thing I'm thinking about around here. But yeah, it does look like our wind is going to die down a bit. And we've got this high pressure for the next few days. So I think really, like I said kind of before, when we have these weather patterns, I'm looking more for like interesting places to go rather than good skiing, and just trying to choose terrain that I can, stay on ribs, because, between couloirs, stuff is super firm and really easy travel, and you can be kind of cramponing in neve, whereas then just in the gully, it's just horrible, like drum like wind slab. But yeah.
Nice. I was just remembering, I thought we should, actually, now that I think about it, I think it was Matt last time was talking about how, well, for those of the audience that don't know, Matt, who's not here this time, and Eric, who we're talking to, they're both skimo racers. Eric, you don't race anymore, but you were on the national team for a while, and you cover a lot more terrain than a guy like me does in the day. So I was kind of picturing last time, I think you both talked about using your pole just to sort of test the snow as you go and feel if there's whatever weakness you're looking for. And it seems to me wind slab would be a really good one for that, whether just as you're hitting tree line and getting up in the alpine, you're probably able just to feel the differences as you get to wind exposed zones.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, how the pole punches through, I think just almost every step of any tour, you're kind of collecting information, whether it's how your ski breaks through or how your poles go through. I mean, I've probably dug 2 actual pits this year. But, I've done multiple daily kind of small hand shears and probe poles and pole probes and things like that, just to collect all that data. The more small data points, I think, the better, rather than just one single big data point.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if it's true that every step you take on a tour is a little bit of data, you are getting like 4 times as much data as most of us. So that's good. You're well dated.
Maybe it's not every step. Yeah.
Anyway.
Do my best.
Yeah, I get the idea. Marcus, I feel like we kind of skipped you there when we were just talking about wind slab and kind of going across and talking about how just any tips, or when you're going out. And right now it does seem like wind slab, and they're listing storm slab too, but in your region. But if wind slab was the only problem for the day, how are you conceptualizing that? How are you dealing with it practically?
Yeah, I mean, the same thing as most people are saying. One thing I really like to do, a little trick, is like when you're doing a little kick turn and trying to get that little wedge, like, is it reactive or not? Because you're going to do the kick turn anyways. So then when you turn and do your 180, you can give it a couple kicks because you've weakened the layer underneath. And now you're able to like see if that's going to actually slide. Is there a sliding layer? Is there too much friction for that? Stuff like cornices. Pretty much, if I think there's wind slab, yeah, one of the things I'm always thinking about is like, can I cause little tiny avalanches, meter by meter, avalanches that aren't gonna hurt me, they're not gonna kill me. I'm not avalanche trained probably, and you grab that data point to see if there's wind slabs everywhere, sure, but is the wind slab actually going to release? I mean, now you're starting to play with fire a little bit if you start trying to ski something because you think it won't release. But you build that confidence up, and as you move into like bigger terrain, and then I mean, just like the every step data point thing is interesting. If you're walking and things are cracking, or you can feel it's really cakey, and you can just tell, like, often by breaking trail if it's not going to be fun to ski down, which is outside the safety issue of wind slab. Generally speaking, it's not the funnest thing to ski, unless maybe if you have reverse camber skis, or a snowboard is usually a bit better, but no one wants to do that. So, those are my tips. Yeah, just try to make little things go, things that aren't going to be a problematic for your group.
I think an example of that, I wasn't with you, but I heard stories of a friend going up Sherbrooke Lake with you, where you're going up a summer trail. It's flattened and it's an easy walk up. You're in trees. You're not even in avalanche terrain, but the side of the trail is kind of a steep bank. And I heard that you were like continuously going up onto the bank just to see if you could get that 1 or 2 meters of steeper slope to slide onto the trail. And just gaining a sense for how reactive the snowpack was that day. Like that, I think that's what you're describing. Hey, finding small, non-consequential slopes.
Yeah, I mean, the size of summer trails, like for access, especially Sherbrooke, is like ideal for that. Yeah, you're not really in avalanche terrain at all. Maybe these little tiny pockets, but not much consequence. And you have this, a trail that's basically packed down, and then you have this side hill that's steeper and it's very small and hasn't been touched by anyone like all season most of the time. And it's quite easy, just to gain that. And because it has no support, you can really test it quite easily, because it's almost like testing a large convex roll or something that just lacks support in general. And that trail provides that kind of shape. So yeah, it's super easy, and you're going that way anyways, right? So
yeah,
the people behind you won't like it because you just pushed a whole bunch of snow on the trail, but that's all right.
No problem. Sweet. Darren, just before we go back to Zoe, you had some good tips just for checking the weather data online there, but I heard, was it Eric, I think, mentioned hand shears. Is that a tool you use often, and would wind slab be like an appropriate problem for that?
Yeah, so there's a couple that I use quite a bit. So hand and dirty, if that is just kind of isolating a small little column, 30 by 30-ish, and stomping it down, and then you're just putting your hand behind the block and then just pulling it with a little bit of resistance. And what you're gaining from that is seeing any sort of density change, a little sliding surface that may pop up, and then how hard it actually took. And that's something you'll calibrate over time, and 10s and 20s of doing them. You'll kind of calibrate your system for that. And like Eric and everybody's highlighted, it's data points. It's helping you just assess what's going on underfoot. And the other tactic I do a fair bit, and I think it's underutilized, is party 1 puts in a skin track, and party 2 through 10 follow that skin track for the duration to the objective. Step off the skin track, go plow in a trail for yourself for 5, 10, 20 meters here and there in different features. And because the skin track's been compromised, it's compacted, it's traveled on. Stepping off the track, you're getting in the fresh snow, and you're going to see that cracking for yourself, or hear those whoops for yourself, get a sense of snow underfoot for yourself. And those are massive data points that are missed all the time, because people stick to the skin track. And I use skin tracks full time, but I step off them all the time just to have a quick look.
Yeah, like that situation Eric was talking about in the Duffy, where there's just denser snow over less dense snow, a weaker setup. You would notice that for sure. If you're breaking trail, your tips wouldn't be coming through. It'd be pretty difficult trail breaking. But if you're on a track, you probably wouldn't notice it at all until you got to your slope and we're trying to make a decision.
Totally. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Well, those are some good tips. Thanks, team. But Zoe, we had a different question for you.
Yeah, there's a couple of good questions in the chat here coming up.
Yeah, can we go with Peter's first there?
Totally. So
I mean, this is the worst question. I'm kind of sandbagging Zoe here, because no avalanche professional ever wants to talk about bridging. It is it's a bag of worms for sure. Good luck.
So Peter is asking, what thickness does a crust start to become a layer where you can trust it to be a competent bridge? So he's talking about that crust layer bridging weaker layers in the snowpack below it. And if my time in New Zealand taught me anything, where it's a pretty crusty place, you can see some avalanches underneath very thick crusts. But when I would trust a crust is when it's thick and supportive to skis or to your boots, where your weight actually isn't punching through that crust, and you're not able to affect the weak layer underneath of it quite as much. Yeah, that's my answer. What do you think, Kevin?
I like that. In the Rockies, I guess we often talk about, people say bridging is not a fact. It's not it doesn't work. Even ski hills will have avalanches that go to ground after terrain has been open for months and is like, you can't put a ski pole through it. But that's a bit dramatic too, because usually there's something else going on, whether it's a big warm up but not always. So, I love that rule of thumb you gave us. Like, if you're not punching through it on ski boots, it's definitely carrying your weight. The exceptions, I would say, then would be the thin edges, where maybe that crust is this thick and you're not punching through it in ski boots everywhere, but then you get to a thin spot, somewhere near the edge of a slope or somewhere that's just got a shallower snowpack, and all of a sudden you would be punching through, and therefore you could trigger an avalanche. That would be a classic Rockies. And if I had to give one more, it wouldn't really be a rule of thumb as much as just for me, I would say, okay, we're not punching through this crust anymore. I think it's done. But I wouldn't trust that myself. I wouldn't go into avalanche train myself yet. I would wait a few days and just see if there are other avalanches happening, if other people are getting into trouble. Like, I just don't want to be the one that finds out if I'm right or wrong. I'd rather wait.
Yeah. I think that was a really good point there, is sometimes it's really hard when we're maybe only getting to go skiing once a week or twice a week or whatever your schedule allows, but there's always tomorrow and next week and next season for these features. That never rings truer than in the Rockies, I would say, for the winter until the real spring melt freeze comes around. Yeah. I think it's tough because we're talking to Eric who is on the coast, and it was +10 in town, it sounded like, and maybe some rain too. Like, when he's saying a crust layer, it would be like the equivalent of our whole snowpack here. So they're just vastly different phenomenons. Do you have anything to add there, Eric? Like, some way to help us visualize that, or just, is that enough maybe just to say they're really different?
I think pretty different. The crust layers here, when they become those kind of reset crusts, are just like, it's dramatic rain events and stuff in the mountains that are causing those, rather than just a wind event or something like that. And it becomes totally supportive. Even at the thinnest points, you wouldn't worry about breaking through that, for it to be a crust that you'd trust, compared to, like you say.
I could imagine too, like the big event you're talking about, big warm up with rain, any of those weak layers are going to avalanche during that cycle. So then once that all refreezes again, you've gone through a huge avalanche cycle, and now it's, a big refreeze. That's a lot different than like, a thin crust over an otherwise delicate snowpack. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, when we have our big Pineapple Express kind of storms, it essentially, like, it kind of flushes everything out, and that's not obviously like a rule, but often that's what happens, and then acts as a reset.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hopefully that helped, Peter. If you have any follow-up questions, just throw them in there. We'll make sure we get to them. But Zoe, I think you were ready to tackle the surface horror versus surface faceting, or should I throw that to someone else, or were you keen on that one?
Yeah, I can tackle that one. So
just when we were talking earlier, I think I just asked you had said there were a few buried surface horror, and just in my mind, I know I had skied a few things that were wind slab and then became good skiing later because they had faceted it out. So I don't know. I mean, maybe between the two of us, we can get through the difference or what those two phenomena are.
Sure. Yeah. So surface horror growth, I guess the big difference between surface horror growth and your surface faceting is that surface horror growth is going to happen during periods of higher humidity. So it'll be a cold, clear night with a little bit of wind and pretty high humidity that forms that surface horror. And surface horror, like Kevin was saying, are those big feathery crystals that are super beautiful on the surface. They kind of make this swooshing sound when you ski through them. They're really nice when they're on the surface, but when they get buried, they become very problematic because they're this quite big, weak layer that can stay in the snowpack for a long time and produce quite wide propagation and really big avalanches. And then
that's the avalanche problem that, like, at least in my experience, and maybe everyone, like, that one's lightning. You know, when you have a surface core layer buried, I don't know, say 40 centimeters or something, and you're triggering it as you walk, it's like zing across the slope and there's a tree that shakes over there, or like it's really dramatic. Thanks, Darren. So here we have surface core. Those are big feathery crystals like we were talking about. Yeah.
And that's way more typical of the mountains around Revelstoke than it is of the Rockies. Like in the Rockies, you do occasionally get surface core problems, but it's not quite as pronounced as it is in the interior.
Yeah, and I guess maybe just before we move on to passing, the thing with those surface core, and it's worth knowing because once the surface core is buried, it's an avalanche problem. So trying to figure out where it grows and where it persists matters. So it can grow all the way to mountaintop, but it's a delicate crystal, isn't it? Like any wind, any sun destroy it.
Yeah, totally. It will easily get destroyed by sun and wind, and it's most likely, it's the classic you're going to hear in sheltered areas at tree line and below. And that's not a rule. That's just a statement that it's usually preserved in those areas, but certainly it can be preserved in the alpine and on sun exposed slopes. It just depends on what the storm is like that buries it.
Right, nice, yeah. And I guess just the last point with it doesn't generally grow under the canopy in a forest. So, you know, those big old growth forests out by Eric or anywhere this in the forest usually doesn't have surface core growth.
Totally, that's a really good point.
Yeah, so these are huge surface core, but you get the idea that they're standing up, and you can understand why if those get buried just perfectly by new snow, that'd be a really delicate, a very fragile layer that would cause avalanches. They're not always that big, but that's a great example. Thanks. So you can try surface fastening, or do I need to pass that one off to someone?
Either way. Someone else can be in the hot seat.
I don't think you got any takers, but maybe Darren will help us out with visuals.
I got this.
Oh yeah.
Well, you guys are from the Rockies.
Okay, well you can help me out with this one then. I helped you out with last one. Fastening, we talk about a ton. I feel like I talk about it every conditions report, so I won't go over it too much. But cold temperatures, we always say temperature gradient, meaning the difference in temperature from here to here, you know, however big or small that is. And so that can be minus 40 and an 80 centimeter snowpack. There's a big temperature difference between the ground, which is 0, the air, which is minus 40. But then when we're talking about surface fastening, it's like the whole snowpack has just come to a homeostasis, like a general temperature it's staying at. And at night it gets cold. So the air temperature just swings and gets cold at night and really only maybe penetrates that top 5-10 centimeters. So you end up with a big temperature gradient, a big temperature difference in that surface snow, that surface, say 5 to 10 centimeters, depending. And so that just turns that snow crystal to facets. So facets don't fall from the sky. They form as moisture moves, and they can form on the surface like that. It can make for great skiing, actually. You get this super consistent, solid, very carvable powder, I guess. Or what we in the Rockies will take as powder. And yeah, and what am I missing there, Zoe?
I thought that was a great explanation and probably pretty relevant right now while it's cold and clear outside and we've got these wind slabs sitting on the surface, and that surface faceting could really help to improve the ski quality.
Right. Yeah. So Darren, I mean, you're probably going to see that in K country, maybe. And as a ski guide, I'd probably be hunting for that in a couple of days, maybe, if that situation continues. Things that were bad skiing might become good skiing. But then what happens when that gets buried?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that. Oh, sorry, Zoe. Yeah.
no, you go.
Yeah. So that you know, I wouldn't say it's. I think the term that was coined was electric. It wouldn't be as electric as a surface core buried layer, but it's a weak layer. It's a snow grain form that's not bondable. It's kind of jagged edges, straight, angular, doesn't mate with its partners around very well, and it just leaves a pretty low density layer that gets buried. And then you get, again, relevant, a wind slab on top of that, a harder density. It just gives a good failing plane, something that can slide on, something that can collapse on, which is our daily routine. Country, really.
Yeah, the one thing I miss is just the facets don't bond well together. That's why they're a weak layer wherever they are in the snowpack.
Right.
Sweet. Well, I mean, I think we sort of covered the last month, covered conditions now and currently. Maybe for our last round here, it's 8 o'clock. We'll probably usually try to go till 8:30. We got time maybe to talk about what's probably coming down the pipe for us and what we'll be looking to ski and get after for the next month. And then we were also just going to, I think, yeah, actually, let's just go with that. Let's just go with that. What's going on for next month, what you're looking at. And I feel like we kind of just went west to east. So maybe we'll do that again. Eric, what's the coast looking like for the next couple of weeks, do you think?
I think high pressure and sunny for the next little bit. Hopefully the wind dies down and it's a little more pleasant to be outside. It's minus 15 or something in the Alpine right now, which is pretty
cool. Minus 15.
Yeah, we'll see if we survive, but got all the down jackets and stuff. I think, yeah, mostly, like I said, kind of just doing fitness stuff and going to interesting places and summits, and not really looking for good skiing. I think stability is going to improve as we go through the week, and that wind does die down and the bits of wind slab that have formed kind of settle out. So it could be good for things like the spearhead or the nave traverse, that kind of stuff. But like I said, I'll be looking for bits of wind slab in unexpected places, especially if it's around terrain traps or consequential stuff. And then maybe a pulse of precipitation by the weekend. Definitely crossing my fingers for one of those huge wet storms that just like slathers on the current surface and kind of obliterates everything. But it is getting a little late in the season for that, maybe. So we could be kind of looking at this repetitive sun crust situation, but fingers crossed that we get the big sloppy storm.
Nice. We'll come back later too, because I want to talk a little bit about like coaching and like how much vert you're making people cover here in the spring, but we'll come back for everyone's strengths at the end. Zoe, how about in the interior? What are things looking like for I mean, you can't predict next month because last time I think I told everyone it was gonna be great skiing for February. So, but what are you seeing for the next little while, or how do you think new snow would bond to this current snow anyhow, even if we do get it?
Yeah, like you said, it's hard to say what's going to happen in a month, but in the short term, we've got a little bit of high pressure. It does look like we'll get a small amount of snow tomorrow, but nothing too significant. And then that high pressure is coming right back in. So in the short term, we've got just under a meter of snow sitting on that mid-February layer. It's hard to say how that's going to bond, honestly. That's definitely a big uncertainty of ours right now. So we're kind of going out, we're checking out these new wind slabs that have formed. And that'll be kind of the game for the next little bit. But I do think that high pressure and the cold temperatures will help to stabilize things a little bit. And we'll probably be able to get into some bigger features and gain some confidence in the snowpack in the next couple of days. And then going into next week, like Eric was saying, it looks like we're into another pretty snowy week. So probably another storm, and we'll see how that sets up and how much snow we get out of that, but maybe some good storm skiing to come.
Cool. So are you the one that wakes up at like 5:30 to see if all the telemetry across BC was what you guys predicted?
Sometimes I am. It's a stressful hour for sure. I feel like I need to play the Mission Impossible theme song or something. Try to get that all done.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate the bulletins. Marcus, how about you? Like any idea sort of what's coming down the pipe for the Rockies, or what you're at least hoping for the next little while? What will be the best case scenario?
Yeah, I don't think I'll jump into predictions too much. I never really like to, but what I'm hoping for is that nothing strange pops back up from earlier in the season. So you know, if things stay the way they are, like right now in the Bolton, you know, we have a wind slab issue. You know, where that goes will be anyone's guess, I guess. But it's supposed to warm up a bit here, not as warm as the coast, but I mean, it'll warm up a little bit, maybe a little bit of trace snow, I don't know, but looking a little bit more favorable. And you know, as long as we go into spring and like, you know, some kind of random old facet issue doesn't wake up, or you know, that's sort of my best case scenario. Like, you know, by March, can I be looking at big stuff? Is it going to line up really nice for April? I mean, that's so far away that it's hard to comment on, but yeah, I'm mostly looking to make sure something doesn't wake up that we maybe forgot about, or didn't get bridged as good as we thought, or who knows. That's always my concern, the Rockies, the lower layers that no one wants to look at.
Yeah, and then that makes sense too. And even the wind slab issues and stuff, you know, we often teach that, you know, 3 days or something is generally how long a wind slab problem lasts. But in the Rockies, we like to say more like 5 days or more, depending, because everything's just more cold and heals slower and is more delicate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, how about if we're looking at K Country? We often have a lot of people from Calgary and Canmore, Darren. So yeah, I mean, looking at K Country right now, looking at how it might be changing for the next little while. Any insights for us?
I love just pulling up graphs and pictures. It really does the speaking for me. This is the 10-day view on spot, which I think most people are probably utilizing nowadays. And the big thing that jumps out at me is it's like a warming trend, thank God. And we have a little pulse of snow, which in Revelstoke, I mean, I think they call that a trace amount, but here that's a pretty good amount of snow coming in, about 16, 20 centimeters. And I think, yeah, Marcus kind of nailed it there. It's what's it falling on? What's it going to be doing later? You know, winds are probably going to increase. They always do kind of come in ebbs and flows. But the next little while is looking a little high pressurey, get out, go get high, go enjoy the scenery. You know, relatively good stability right now. And then next week, a little reset, which might bring some, you know, a nice reset again after the weekend, which is always nice. So yeah, it's kind of our status quo, little storms, little periods of clear, and in this case, a nice warming trend, but still staying well below zero, which is nice.
Cool. Well, I'm going to put you down for clear skies and deep powder for the month, sounds like. So when we meet next month, we'll see what happened, hey? Perfect. No, I love, you know, for the last round here, we do have a couple questions to get to, but first, Darren, I thought it'd be good if we just talked a little bit about, because it's pretty rare we have a public safety specialist with us. And like I say, there are a lot of people around here who are using K Country a lot. You had talked about a binding break that you had the last couple of days, and it kind of got us talking about how when it's minus 30, almost anything's an emergency in the backcountry, and just how you've been seeing this year, maybe people are dealing quite well with that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I touched on that. Yeah, snapped a heel piece today, skiing. And, you know, I attribute some of that to cold weather, and kind of more importantly, like you just said, cold weather makes small emergencies quite serious when it's daytime highs of minus 20 and you're starting out in minus 30 and colder values like we were in the last kind of 2 days. So, you know, a couple things would be things that change in my bag is, you know, I throw in way more insulation in my bag. Usually some sort of insulating pant that's zippable. You can get that on yourself or an injured member of your or another party. A repair kit is always in my backpack, you know, tons of ski straps and some baling wire and some pliers and screwdrivers and bits and, you know, pieces that you can kind of limp your way out of anywhere. Changed quite a bit. And then just the length and type of day I'm doing. Like today, I wasn't going and skiing north face in aspects. I was getting up into the sun as quickly as I could. And we got into the sun after about an hour and it was minus 12. It was quite comfortable in the sun. We dropped back into the valley again and it was minus 28 within a 200-meter band, kind of between shade and sun. So I'm really kind of choosing my objectives wisely for these temperatures and kind of reining in my risk tolerance too quite a bit. You know, a hurt knee or a broken leg and waiting for a response can be, I mean, depending on the day, it could be hours, it could be an overnight if it happens in the in the later parts of the day. The days still are that not that long. So I think, yeah, I chat with people out there all the time and kind of curious what they have in their bags, and most people are well-ish prepared overall. It's like the skiing, climbing crowds. I think they anticipate the hazards a little bit better than maybe the summer users who are kind of out in just way more pleasant temperatures with maybe without that background. Just as skiers or climbers, we definitely have a different level of understanding of the environment we're going into. So really happy to see that. I think the big thing is, yeah, we don't see a lot of calls in the winter. I think that's because of, I hate to call it good behavior, but really good tactics and good understandings of the environments we're heading into. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. You were saying you hadn't seen that many rescues yet this winter, which was both surprising and encouraging when you said that.
It's very encouraging. It's great to see, and people are out there getting after it, and having a good time, and we're not seeing the calls, which is, I mean, that's great. Keep doing what you guys are doing. It's great.
Nice. I love that. Marcus, I couldn't help but think as he was talking about what's in his pack, that you might have something to chip in there. And I know, like, you're a guy who's often really valued adventure and being prepared and self-reliance. Anything else you'd add to the backpack kit there that you might carry?
I think that covered most of it. Get me off the ground. Whether that, I usually have like a 3/4 length closed cell pad. The things weigh 150 grams. I just strap it to the outside my backpack using the clips. And
like a sleeping pad?
Yeah, just like a closed cell, like just not full size, but just something where I can get the main core of the body off. And then if someone was seriously injured, I throw my bag under their feet or something like that. But just something with actual insulation properties, mostly for the core part of your body, to not be directly on the snow. I usually carry a small tarp. Tarps weigh absolutely nothing. You get a 200-gram tarp that you can make a pretty good shelter in. Fire making stuff, worst comes to worst, I guess. But yeah, mostly it's about getting off the snow, getting warm, and getting water. So carrying, on very cold days, I'll carry more water than I normally do. Even if I do have a small stove, like emergency stove with me, making water in -30, -40. I've done it lots of my life. It's not as easy as -10. Just everything's colder, everything takes longer. The fuel is harder to prime. So, just having more than what you think you need is always better. One thing I think I'll throw in real quick is I like to carry a backpack that's larger than I need. I think a lot of people try to go with the smallest backpack they can get away with. And I'm doing day trips with 55-liter because a couple of times in my life, I've had partners get seriously injured and I've had to carry all their stuff out. And, if you have a 25-liter little mini pack, well, you're not helping no one with that. So I think that's something a lot of people don't think about, and I'm sure people will continue not doing, but I think it's a great thing to do, carry a big backpack.
Nice. All right. Well, I think we might have another take on that. Zoe, there's a question about glide cracks. Why don't we come back to that? But first, I thought, Eric, you might have a different take on, like, it's important to be prepared. You've definitely said that a few times yourself on these meetings, but you're also a member of the fast and light community, and I'm somewhere in between. I definitely am not carrying a 55-liter pack, and I'm a real wimp when it comes to weight, actually. But yeah, I don't know. So how do you make that balance between light and fast, and doing some big objectives and moving quickly in the mountains, but also sort of being prepared?
Yeah, definitely not carrying a 55-liter pack. That's crazy. I think we're very lucky here on the coast with temperatures, in not having to worry about -28 or -30, except for maybe a few days a year. And so a lot of times I just think it does take a little less here to survive a night. no question. So that's a big factor. But when we do have those temperatures come through, I'm definitely changing how I'm thinking about what I'm doing for the day, whether that's being slightly less risky, hitting, not quite as serious of lines, or not going quite as deep, or just keeping in mind what the kind of evacuation strategies are going to be. Am I able to rely on search and rescue, or is this something where I'm going to be having to call friends, or just rely on the partners that I'm with? So I think that's a pretty big consideration. And then, yeah, I mean, for the kind of just every little thing in my pack is pretty specifically chosen and optimized in terms of weight and usability. Like I'm trying definitely to avoid carrying anything that's duplicate or potentially adds any extra weight.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's definitely a balance to be struck there. What do they always say? If you want to go far, take lots of friends, or maybe you can adopt that to be like, if you want to go far, take lots of gear, and if you want to go fast, take less. But that was a pretty good roundup. I mean, Joel at the shop there has lots of lightweight gear and bigger packs, sort of everything in between, and they're experts at helping everyone choose that stuff. But we're getting pretty close to wrapping it up here, I think, team. I'd love to just do one more round to talk to everyone about sort of what they got going on. You guys this is a pretty rad crew. I want to hear about what everyone's doing and going on. But before we do, there was one last question there, Zoe. I don't think we need to have a 15-minute discussion about glide cracks, and I don't know about any specific one on Grizzly Shoulder. I don't know if you do, but maybe just describe quickly what glide cracks are and a little bit about how to manage.
Yeah, I always get the hard questions, eh?
Yeah, that's what you're here for sure.
So glide cracks tend to form on areas with really smooth ground cover. So that'd be like a rock slab or like a grassy slope that's quite smooth and even. Glide cracks usually form in the springtime when you have quite a bit of moisture in the snowpack, and you tend to have water flowing at the base of the snowpack that kind of allows this crack to form, and the whole snowpack will kind of move down, but not necessarily create an avalanche. It just kind of moves down and creates a crown line in the snowpack.
And like a gap, eh? Like a crevasse, really, but not on a glacier, just the whole snowpack.
And this one that Tim's talking about, it seems to form every year at the base of teddy bear trees. So when you're walking up Connaught, you kind of look up to your right and you can see this big glide crack. And like my best hypothesis is that maybe there's groundwater coming out of the slope there. There could be some kind of spring water. I don't know why it forms in that exact spot, but it poses a hazard for people skiing down onto it. And in warm temperatures or during the spring, you'd want to be pretty suspect of those glide cracks, of creating large avalanches that go to ground essentially when it's really warm out and we're getting those spring warm-ups.
Yeah, it's not something, living in the Rockies that I have to deal with very often. But when I have been heli ski guiding and to other operations that they have glide cracks pretty commonly, a few things are that they basically form in the same spot every year. Whatever the slope is, if it's there every year, it's probably gonna be there again this year. And they're basically almost impossible. They are pretty much impossible to predict when they might release. Some of them will just melt out, and you'll just have this hole that looks like the start of an avalanche. It looked like a crown, like Zoe was saying. But like the avalanche didn't go anywhere. It looked like that until spring. They'll all melt out and go away. Other times they form for a while and they just get bigger and bigger, almost hard to perceive. And then eventually they will tear out and be catastrophic avalanches, because we're talking about the whole snowpack going. So anywhere I've ever dealt with them has been part of a guiding operation. And basically once they form, we avoid going on the slopes below them, period. Like that's just kind of our standard one. But I have heard of some spots where they form every year and people find a way just to cross one at a time quickly below them, aware of the hazard and just trying to mitigate it. Darren, I see you nodding a lot. I wonder if you had anything to add there, or Eric on the coast. Maybe you guys have different ideas of glide cracks. It's really not something I deal with much.
Pretty minimal for me as well. I mean, I don't get to deal with them that much, but I'm kind of on the same belief as you. They're a known hazard. I just kind of stay clear. Yeah.
Are there some you deal with all year out there on the coast, Eric, that you guys just all get really comfortable with, or is it something you're always avoid? Like, there must be some in between. Even on the ski hill, there are glide cracks that just sit there all year.
Yeah, I mean, we see them not infrequently, but I guess, yeah, I mean, definitely don't want to ski into one. So steering pretty clear of that. I think on quite smooth slopes, like we see them on the south facing slopes above Duffy Lake, pretty often they start to form because it's just like grass. But most places around here are so rocky in the Alpine that it doesn't happen a whole lot. I can think of like Sun Bowl on Whistler Mountain has a big grassy slope, and that often has a glide crack, even in like December, January. But yeah, I think just steer clear.
Yeah. And when I say steer clear, I mean, I guess, you would ski down below one maybe and enjoy the run below and just duck out, or, it's not like you can't have anyone on the slope below, but we wouldn't land a helicopter there or have lunch there, or have a whole group sit there. I wouldn't even up track underneath one. I would be too nervous, but I would definitely cross them. So I think that answers Tim's question though.
As long as you can air it.
Yeah, just send it. Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, for the just last round here, saying goodbyes and see if anyone's got anything to chip in, but also just check in on what everyone's doing. Eric, I know you do a lot of coaching. Are you pretty busy with that? Are you taking on new clients, or your coaching has everything to do with your PhD, which is in what again?
Exercise physiology. Yeah. We primarily work with runners and kind of summer mountain athletes, and then skiers as well. So both skimo racers and just kind of general ski tours and build fitness and all that. And yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Well, if I want to get up Columbia quicker this spring, maybe I should have called you a month ago and started training.
Exactly.
Never too late though. How about you, Zoe? Avalanche Canada, I think it's keeping you pretty busy, but do you have any spring plans, or are you this is a pretty new role for you? How's the first year there going?
Yeah, first year has been pretty good. Definitely busy with the work at Avalanche Canada. Getting ready for my apprentice ski guide exam here.
Ooh, that's this spring.
Beginning of April. So yeah, getting out skiing as much as I can and balancing work and being out in the skis. So
how many friends have you rescued from fake crevasses?
Oh, too many. Yeah. Yeah, that's been fun for sure.
Good. Your rope skills are never more dialed than your apprentice ski guide exam year.
Yeah, seriously.
Awesome. Thanks. And Marcus, how the new book sales going? You released a new book this year, confessionsofaskibum.com.
Yeah, I did. It's going all right. I think, I don't know, we'll see. Print is slowly going out, but lots of people downloading. So that's sort of offsetting maybe paper book sales, but no, it's going all right. I finally paid it all off. So
nice.
That was nice. Yeah. And yeah, I'm just, I'll be finishing up some work before some vacation, and I'll be probably skiing hopefully kind of full time this spring again, and then summer, and then I probably have to start getting back into shape, real shape for next winter. So yeah, this winter has been kind of a weird one for me because I've had to work, but yeah, I'm more looking forward to April, May, and then next year now.
Nice. Well, I mean, I'm sure I speak for everyone. Like your new book, the Bow Valley one, there's some lines in there that were opened my eyes to, and I've been stoked on it. I've definitely downloaded it. I think a lot of people have probably downloaded it, so hopefully everyone's using the little contribute button to throw a few bucks your way and as like a thank you for all 3 books. So thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no problem.
And Darren, what's going on in Cape Country? You guys got anything interesting going on for the next couple months?
Yeah, not too much going on around here. Yeah, we're just kind of out skiing and training a lot. As well as Zoe, I'm doing my apprentice exam coming up here in a couple months. So out there skiing and trying to turn another alpine climber into a skier. And it's happening.
Nice. Yeah, you're a pretty good skier, I think, though. I don't think we've ever skied together, but
I've been working on it. Yeah.
Nice. Well, that'll be a fun winter for you.
Totally. Yeah, it's been great so far, for sure.
Hey, you're pretty new at K Country too, I think. How's the first year and a half been?
Yeah, it's been really good. Yeah, I was up in Jasper for 3 years previous with the national parks, and made the move back south to be back home. And it's really good. It's a good, in the summers, a really good busy program, and in the winters, it's just a really good program to just get out and ski and climb full time, and be available. So yeah, no, I'm really happy where I'm at right now.
Awesome, man. Well, we're really thankful you're able to join us. It's great to get some K Country perspective. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. This is great.
How about you, Joel? What's going on at the shop these days? I know you guys always get excited around, looking ahead to spring. We're still a month or two away. We'll be having another condition support probably in a month. And when we do that, we'll probably all be talking about the big faces and the steep spring lines coming in and all that Rockies excitement. But in the meantime, I think you got some skimo races, right?
Yeah, here's the time of the year where, we didn't get that last year because I don't know if you remember, but February was like so much deep snow that people were getting tired of skiing so much powder. But this is kind of like more of a classic year for the Rockies, right? Where like people drop out a little bit in January and February, and then like kind of just chill out for a couple of weeks before the glacier season starts in March. And we're seeing that here at the shop. It's a bit quieter. It's a lot of repairing and servicing ahead of the rest of the season. And it's crazy to think that like for the Rockies, we're only really kind of halfway through, right? There's going to be some really good skiing all the way till like mid-May, late May, very easily. So lots of people getting kind of dialed for the rest of the season. We had a bit of issues with availability of like equipment in January, and now it's kind of getting better. So we'll be able to outfit people a bit better for the spring. So yeah, and in the meantime, yeah, we're like, there's some skimo racing with Skimo Alberta this weekend. We have a Citizen Series at Norquay this Saturday. For those who are interested in that and think that skimo, there's no good skiing to be had in skimo, just sign up for the Kicking Horse race, which has got to be like the best course in all of North America right now. There's going to be a race. It's the North American Championships at Kicking Horse at the end of March. So that's going to be a 3-day weekend. And there's a teams race, which is 2,600 meters of vertical, I think, and gets to ski all the double black terrain and like, abseils and stuff. It's pretty cool. So we're kind of in a bit more of a skimo vibe right now. And otherwise, we have a Mammoth event tomorrow night. So if you're in Canmore and you have a transceiver that needs an update or a test, just swing by. We have a little kind of après ski with Mammoth. And yeah, that's it. Otherwise, I think that everybody's just like, there was nothing happening for a few weeks, and now it's finally good skiing in the Rockies again. So like people are getting out, and despite it being really cold today and yesterday, but people are getting out again, and it's not nowhere near as quiet as it was the last week and a half.
Yeah, and temperatures aren't going to stay cold long here, so that's good. But did I see that you got the Dynavit Radicals in? Because that is the boot I've been rocking for the last year, and I love that thing. So I told everyone to get it. Can you actually sell it now?
Yeah. We had a lot of struggles in January and into February with gear, and there's just the supply chain disruption and COVID and whatnot. And we're finally like catching up in a lot of availability. So if you missed the boat on like something you wanted early in the season, there's good chances we'll have, or we are getting right now, a lot more in stock, or we'll be getting more. So it's a bit of an unusual time where like we're getting a lot of really late shipments this year.
Yeah, it's kind of been that kind of year. Well, next month when we do meet, I'm sure we're all going to be talking about glacier coverage, getting ready for skiing on glaciers, WAPTAs, everything up high at the pass, on the coast. That'll be great. We'll be talking about some of the steep lines, maybe some of the couloirs again that Marcus was talking about today. Everyone will be swinging by ski uphill to get their glacier kits and their lightweight axes and everything to get rad. So
yeah, I feel like the FOMO isn't quite as strong as it is sometimes right now. It's like, the season's been super good and it's just starting to be good again in the Rockies. So there's less kind of like, fear of missing out. That's always there. And this year it's more of a classic kind of Rockies season.
Yeah. But by next month, usually late March, that will have changed. We'll all be kind of going nuts at that point. So I look forward to it all. But again, thanks everyone for coming. Definitely got to thank the panel because that is a really good group of people we had today. And I think we all appreciate your your insights. So thanks everybody.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks everybody.
And guys.